You feeling stuck lately? Like life's passing you by? Get to know M.A.Y.A.
Acronym My Ambition, Your Ambition.
Reconnect with your dreams, your goals, your ambitions. Find your motivation and start to live the life you desire. Explore the M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition podcast at M.A.Y.A.Akai.com.
Namaste, everyone. Happy Thursday. Welcome to another episode of M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition. In fact, it is episode 32. Stop your silence, unmute yourself. I'm going to really enjoy this because this is something I think a lot of people don't keep in front of them when we talk about pulling back that veil of self-doubt and self-sabotage that plagues so many of us in our lives. This is one of those episodes I think is going to help you to identify some of those things you struggle with in regards to being able to be that self-advocate, finding that voice, taking back your power. This is key to stop your silence and unmuting yourself. But there's a science and an art to this, like there's with everything. So with that being said, if you are a first-time listener or viewer, welcome aboard. As I always say, buckle up for safety. Not that this isn't a safe space, but occasionally I may say something that resonates with you, that makes you think, that takes you back. So this is why I always say make sure you have a pen and paper. And I feel like this is one of those episodes where it would be good to have a pen and paper to jot down some of your thoughts or ideas, because we have quite a few toolbox times and real talk times in this particular episode. So I definitely get your pen, pencil, paper, get ready to jot some stuff down. If you are a returning listener or viewer, then you know the routine. You know what we do here. You should know how things work by now. The key thing to know about M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition, is that you're working at your own pace. We're 32 episodes in, but just know you work at your own pace. So if you're still back on episode 19, 20, 25, whatever, I'm okay with it, because one episode may take you more work in kind of capturing the information that's there than another. But if you're here right now because you like to stay current with the episodes as they roll out, I'm good with that. That's all good too. So we got to do our housekeeping things before we start. Remember, you can always find episodes of M.A.Y.A at M.A.Y.A.Akai.com. The key thing with every single episode, I usually give some podcast resources to kind of go along with the episode, some additional things to read and to think about to flesh out the conversation a bit more. So just go to M.A.Y.A.Akai.com, click on the podcast resource section, and guess what? Boom, there'll be some additional things that you can use to kind of expand this conversation. Whether you are watching me on Facebook or YouTube, hopefully by now you have subscribed. Call to action, a couple things I want you to do. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. Just go to M.A.Y.A.Akai. I always joke and say you're going to have to scroll down a couple places to find me and then click subscribe. That's how that works. Of course, by now I'm hoping you've gotten social with me, that you are following me on Instagram and Twitter at @M.A.Y.A_Akai, or you can find me on Facebook at M.A.Y.A.Akai Presents. Those are different ways you can get social with me. And if you're listening to the podcast when you're out and about, because of course you can take M.A.Y.A on the go, that's good. You can always go to your podcast platform of choice. So whether you like iTunes, Google Play, iHeartRadio, I'm on Spotify, I'm on Amazon Audibles now. You can always find M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition, and take me on the go and listen to my episodes that way as well. So those are different things you should do to be getting involved in the show. There will be a guest tied to episode 32. I'm kind of excited about this. This is... and it's going to be a really interesting conversation, because my running joke with the guest we're going to have, her name is LaDonna Ray. LaDonna Ray is a publicist. She owns LR Media Group. She's going to join us to expand the conversation. I've known LaDonna for several years. We actually connected through radio. We're both fellow Aquarians, and our joke is that we are sisters from another mother. And when we get to talk and things really kind of go intense, intuitive, and insightful. So you're definitely going to enjoy the conversation when LaDonna jumps in. She's going to jump in at the bottom of the hour, be on for about 15 or 20 minutes in that part of the conversation. So make sure you're tuned in and ready to go. And definitely, whether you are a first-time or returning listener or viewer, strap up. Get ready for some safety on that one. Because I already tell you that when me and LaDonna connect, it's really always an interesting conversation. Before I jump into episode 32, we have to bring on, of course, dun 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 dun, Miriam, the M.A.Y.A musical muse. How are you?
Hi, I'm good.
Okay,
Can
well,
you
now
hear
we're
me?
good.
Is that better?
That's perfect.
Okay.
We were having a little technical faux pas as we were kind of
Yeah.
doing our pre-meeting for the show. And I'm like, I don't know. We're both like, we hate technical stuff.
Literally, it's the worst. It makes me so upset when it doesn't work.
I know, because it's like, and it always happens when you don't have enough time to resolve it.
Exactly. I was like, oh my gosh, it's like 2 minutes. And so I ran upstairs, grabbed my headphones, and then ran back downstairs So we're good now, though.
Yes, we're good. So how are you today?
I am good. Colorado's expecting a big snowstorm.
What?
So,
Okay,
yeah.
I just want to say that's really unfortunate for you. Keep that
Mhm.
over there, okay?
Yeah. No, I know. And the weather's been so nice. And so I'm not excited. It's supposed to come this weekend. And yeah, it's going to be a lot. So I'm not happy about it.
Well, hopefully, because the temperatures are rising everywhere, it'll be that kind of snow that won't stick.
Yeah.
It'll be kind
Yeah.
of wet snow and it'll be gone the next day. And
Yeah.
hopefully you can be back up to like your 50-degree weather and be
Yeah.
happy.
Yeah. That would be nice because it's
All right.
nice outside right now. So,
It's beautiful here in
yeah.
Illinois. We're like, oh wow, cross our fingers. This is
Yeah.
great spring weather. So
Yeah.
everyone's excited. They're out. People couldn't wait to get outside. So this
Oh, yeah.
fresh weather, people needed to be able to get outside again. So
Mhm.
I'm always excited about all your songs. But
Yes.
I've been digging through, Miriam's like different things she's recorded. Of course, you can find her on iTunes, Spotify, if you name it, Amazon, she's there. So please go out and
Yes.
purchase her music. As I say,
Yes.
support independent artists.
Mhm.
This one, I just was looking through songs and I'm like, it really resonated with me with this particular episode.
Mhm.
So I reached out to Miriam. I said, well, can we use this song? Because I think
Yeah.
it's a perfect fit. So
It is.
original music. So far, we have been on the original music thing
I
for
like it. I'm
for-
not mad.
for a stretch here. So good stuff. All right. Well, I will see you on the back end of the hour and we'll feature that song that it's Time is a Bomb is still my first favorite.
Yeah.
This might be my second one.
It's a good one.
Okay.
It is a good one.
Yes. All right. We will see you in a little
right.
bit. All right, everybody. That is Miriam McQueen. She is the M.A.Y.A musical muse where we play songs. Sometimes she covers things, but recently we've been doing a lot of her original music on the show. So we have another one of her original songs that we're going to feature. The last couple of weeks, we were featuring music from her EP, Heart of Gold. So make sure you, like I said, you go to iTunes, Google, Amazon, download her music, support independent artists, good stuff. All right. So let's jump in and prepare for episode 32. Stop your silence, unmute yourself. And I can't begin to tell you how I do believe that this is going to resonate with a lot of people. And of course, like a few people who've chimed into the show already. Hello, James O'Bannon, how are you? Well as Roburn, who tunes in. You can post a comment, whether you're on StreamYard, or if you're on Facebook, or even if you're on YouTube, and I can share your comments on the screen. So if you say something that you want to share or it's brilliant, please share it so I can share it with our listening audience. So whether you're a viewer, I'll read it. And if you're obviously listening, we'll make sure it all fits in for you. All right, so let's jump into episode 32. Stop your silence, unmute yourself. Now, what do we always do every time we start the show? And it's never going to change for me because I think it's paramount that this becomes a habit for you. One of the things I want you to gain from the show, besides the fact this is you time, this is me time, this is our time, which means hopefully you're in a space where you can kind of listen to this quietly. That might be why you're listening to the episode after the fact. But if you're here with me right now, I enjoy the fact that you're present in the moment with me. So hopefully you have your beverage of choice. I'm on a soda stream kick. So I'm doing my soda stream, just regular, soda water, so to speak. But whatever you're drinking, coffee, tea, it's 5 o'clock somewhere. So it's happy hour. So if you have a glass of wine or whatever the case may be, whatever helps you to enjoy the show, so be it. So being toolbox time. One of the takeaways from the podcast that I always want you to know is that we're always learning things to put into your personal toolbox, things that you can use to get to that best version of yourself, because that's what M.A.Y.A is all about. That everyday version of yourself, harnessing that everyday happiness, which can become cumulative, which you then can quantify, and it's a bigger picture. You become that bigger picture of the best version of yourself. Happiness becomes an overarching experience that you've had because you're doing the little things that add up to the big things. So we always have the toolbox. I'm giving you things to stick in there. So we have everything. For instance, toolbox time. We're going to put what? In your toolbox is emotional intelligence. But I tell you every single episode, I need you to take it out. And of course, if you're a new listener, emotional intelligence, EI, refers to the ability to perceive, control, and evaluate emotions. And it's the thing that can help you to learn to respond to situations and people opposed to reacting. Because when you react to a situation or a person, it usually means now you got to go up and do some cleanup work because you didn't stop to process what happened, why it's eliciting an emotion from you, and then why you want to act a certain way. EI kind of pulls those things back and allows you to, as it says, perceive the situation what it is. While you're perceiving it, you've learned to control your emotions and not just pop off, because you're evaluating things and then you act accordingly. We're all about being a responder in your toolbox opposed to being a reactor in your toolbox. Now, mind you, there might be some situations in life where you need to respond. I'm not going to say that's not the case, but in most cases, that's not where we necessarily want you to be. So, toolbox, we're always putting things in your toolbox. We've put in there emotional intelligence, subjectivity, objectivity, all things that you really need to be able to get to that best version of yourself and to really harness happiness, so to speak. So, when we talk about here in episode 32, stop your silence, unmute yourself. Well, let's do a little definition because I like to define things, put things in a framework that we can work with on the show. So, what does it mean to silence or mute yourself? For me, and how I would tell you I'm talking about it in terms of the podcast, is that it's an intentional hiding or masking of your feelings or thoughts to accommodate an individual, group, or situation that you're in. So let's go over it again. It's an intentional hiding or masking of your feelings or thoughts to accommodate an individual, group, or situation that you're in. Now, remember, I could throw emotions in there too, because remember last week from the energy podcast, we talked about emotions versus feelings. Emotion is thought. It's cognitive, it's mental. It's the idea, the construct you have of something, and hence it elicits a feeling. So happy, something that makes you happy, you've got a concept of what happy is, and it elicits itself through happiness, is the response you get, the feeling. So that was the last episode, which, by the way, these have all become very, very intertwined, not on purpose. Every subject, like I already have the one for next week, just based on preparing this one, because I think this should be a roadmap to help you to really to get to the best version of yourself. So what does it mean to silence or mute yourself? Again, it's an intentional thing where you hide or mask your feelings or thoughts to accommodate an individual, group, or situation that you're in. Okay. And I said before, there's going to be a few of these in the show. This is Real Talk Time number 1. And the real talk times in the show are about, let's just really pull back the veil. Let's just be real honest. Let's just break down and talk directly about things that are going to affect you muting or silencing yourself. So I'm going to start out with, while we're talking about silencing or muting yourself, I think I have to give you some premises to work from to determine if you're doing it. So I would ask you this. 1, do you often feel like you are walking on eggshells with individual, groups, or situations? So do you find that you can't say what you think, you can't speak what you feel, you can't express yourself? And the key thing about silence and muting yourself, and you have to know this, is, we'll talk about this in a bit, it's about the occurrence of it, the frequency of it. And there's some things I'm going to have you discern with, because I don't want this to get all put into a hodgepodge. So real talk time. Do you feel like you are walking on eggshells a lot around individuals, within groups, or situations? Some people feel like I go into work and I just feel like I'm under a microscope. You ever say something like that? I feel like no matter what I do, it's not right. Even if I thought I did the right thing, I'm always expecting that I'm going to mess something up because I'm dealing with this person or I'm dealing with this group. That's walking on eggshells. So if you constantly feel this way, chances are you are dialing back a part of yourself to avoid that response or to have an adverse situation happen because you don't want to misinterpret something, or you already kind of know the response that you might elicit from somebody and you don't want to deal with it. So you choose to tiptoe around it, so to speak. The next thing that I would ask you is, do you frequently, feel like you can't express yourself, or if you share it, it will become or create or become an issue? So do you frequently feel like if you express how you feel, that it's going to become an issue or it's going to create an issue? Mind you, this means you kind of understand the people that you're dealing with. Now, this is where we can go ahead and we can jump into toolbox time. Technically, I'm going to call it 1, because the first one is our standard, take out your EI and all those things that you already have in your box. It's just a reminder to get out there and do it. Here's a key thing about toolbox time number 1. When I talk about understanding the dynamics of how you communicate or interact with people, it's the difference of you getting the outcome you desire versus the outcome you don't desire. And this is one, when I said this to somebody, they said, real talk, I never really thought about that. But this is one of the things I want you to put into your toolbox, because it can be the thing that can truly affect the way you interact with people and how you decide to project yourself or present yourself in situations. Understanding the difference between ignore versus disregard. They tend to be synonymous, but I'm going to kind of pull them apart a little bit to help you understand when you're dealing with people and why you might be muting or silencing yourself. So, ignore refers to when someone refuses to take notice of or acknowledge, or they fail to consider something of significance that's being presented to them. Note, this can be conscious and unconscious. Conscious is like you're talking about something about how you feel, and they might be so enmeshed in the moment, it goes in one ear and out the other. That's kind of unconscious. Some people don't have high emotional intelligence, which would be the key thing. When we talk about emotional intelligence, when you're dealing with people, remember, it isn't just about yours. We're talking about your ability to perceive, control, and evaluate not just you, but other people. So sometimes you may be trying to express to yourself what you feel to someone, or you assume that something within your body language should be kind of saying it, and they're just not seeing it. Some people exist in their own silo. So hence they just don't get it. They just can't connect with other people. They have very low emotional intelligence. So they tend to ignore something, which tends to create an issue for you. On the flip side of that, disregard clearly looks different, because disregard is to take the stance or action of paying no attention to something. And note, disregard is an intentional decision to address what is being presented. That's the difference between the two. So if you find yourself in a situation where you're like, I know damn well that that person knows that just aggravated me, but they have chose to not act, respond, or ignore it. Because disregard, there's a part of ignore in it. Like, I know what you just did, but I'm making a choice to turf it to the side and not give it any attention. I'm intentionally making the decision to not respect how you think or you feel. So when you talk about your toolbox, you need to have these two things in your toolbox, because when you're dealing with people and you feel like somehow you're muting yourself or you're silencing yourself, you first have to ask yourself, is this a circumstance that's rooted in whoever I'm dealing with or the situation I'm dealing with? Are they ignoring me because they just don't have good emotional intelligence, or they're just so removed from the situation and the outcomes and the consequences, they don't get how this adversely affects me? Or do they clearly know what's going on, but have chosen to disregard what I think and what I feel? And the danger of the two is both, but disregard has a stronger message that is sending to you about how someone respects you or cares about you. So put those two in your toolbox when you talk about, how do I discern what's going on here? Now, we're going to have our real talk time too on this. Because all this, I said we're going to have a couple of these, because now that I've given you two tools to put in your toolbox, let's put them into action, which is like real talk. It is important to understand what position you think a person is working from if you're having to silence, aka mute yourself. And this is why the ignore and the disregard is key. Now, the key thing I want you to do, opposed to reacting and saying, I feel like this person is just disregarding my feelings because that's how I feel. That's not the proper way to truly evaluate the situation. Because your emotional intelligence, because right now we're working towards being medium to high, means we know maybe under the surface with this person, there could be something else that prevents them from being able to connect the dots with the situation that's being presented in front of them. Everyone can't see the forest for the trees. That's sometimes what it is for some people. So real talk, when I say it's important to understand what position you think a person is working from, if you're having to silence or aka mute yourself, here's what I need you to do in that situation. And this part is really, really, really important. And this is where, if you've been in tuned, I told you I was trying to put together like some episodes, the numbers, so I could go back and say, hey, go check out episode 19, 20, 22, 23, or whatever. But I can't remember which one are which. But this is where you would reference the episodes about self-advocacy, communication, and taking back your power, because they can help you in the conversation you might need to have with somebody if you're feeling muted. In fact, these episodes may have helped you to discover that you have been muting yourself. So I need for you, before you determine that you understand what they're thinking, to do the work to actually understand what they're thinking, which means having a conversation. And how do we set our table when we have conversations with people? We pretty much say this. I've been really thinking about something, and it's really been on my mind. And it's not to say that what I think is actually what may be happening, but this is the way that I feel. And I don't want to misinterpret the situation. So I figured, opposed to me sitting here and playing a guessing game of what I think you're thinking and how it's impacting how I'm feeling, I wanted to talk to you about this and ask you some questions. This will tell you, based on how they respond, if they are like oblivious to what you're saying and you believe it legitimately, then they probably have ignored what has been unfolding in front of them and assumed that it was business as usual. But if you find that you've had this conversation before and you know they just disregarded what you've talked about, then you can say you know what they're thinking, because you've brought up how you feel about something and they've chosen just to put it over in the corner like it doesn't matter. That's the part that's key. So we're not working off of I think, I feel. We're working off of I know, because I've asked the questions to figure out why I feel this way. Why do I respond to you or react to you this way? Because maybe this has happened. It's important to sit down and have the conversations. Now, here's a warning when you talk about real talk times. Seriously. If you were dealing with a person with low emotional intelligence, if you're dealing with a person who is low on the accountability scale, the chances that you're going to get the response you want may be non-existent. And that becomes when you ask yourself, is this the kind of situation or relationship I want to put myself in, where a person is so encompassed with their own thoughts and feelings, they have no ability to understand when they're impacting somebody else and the negative outcomes that might be coming from their actions towards that person. See, this is when you have to decide, I'm taking back my power and I'm removing myself from a very negative situation. Their energy, last week's podcast, is not resonating with my energy. That's often a hard thing for people to do, especially if they have emotionally and mentally committed to being in that situation with that person. Work situations can be very similar. They can be very, very similar. And a lot of people struggle with that. Like, how do I handle it if I feel like I'm at work and, this is happening? Something else that I want you to understand that's equally as important. And this is where we're going to talk about toolbox time 2. Striking a balance is really important. And one of the things that I think people often struggle with in situations is understanding that sometimes you may make adjustments to people, places, and things based on what you have gathered in regards to a culture that exists. That's not muting yourself. That is making an adjustment to an environment. So let's just say you walk into a workplace and there's a culture that exists and you've picked it up. So you decided there's parts of yourself you're going to dial back. There's parts of yourself you're not going to introduce into your work personality. That's next week's podcast, the duality of personality. That's not masking or silence or muting yourself. You're making a decision based on what you know about a culture or an ecosystem and kind of what works to not kind of necessarily rock the boat. Now, here's the thing. This is where we get into striking the balance. I want you to ask yourself a couple questions when you find this happening. Why are you muting yourself? You have to ask yourself that. Is it because I'm afraid I'm going to offend someone? I'm afraid that my ideas and my feelings will not be accepted. I'm going to create controversy when I pretty much tell somebody that this has happened and I don't like the way it made me feel. I'm going to rock the boat. So if you find that you're muting yourself because you're afraid to disrupt a situation to make other people uncomfortable, now you have to question if this is the right place for you to be, because why does everybody else get to be uncomfortable, get to be comfortable, and you have to be uncomfortable? Not acceptable. The next thing I would ask you to ask yourself, and this is equally as important, how often do you find this happening? And this is where the conversation where frequency steps in. And this is about silencing and muting. It's about, yes, there are situations you may choose to navigate and kind of pull back and not fully express yourself because you think that's appropriate. That's okay. Because when you see the person who walks in the room and it's like, booyah, and they like, bam, and it's like they take it over, and you'll hear people say, that person has no filter. That's not necessarily a good thing, because they didn't look around and survey the scene, and always speaking what's on your mind is not always the right thing to do. There's not always a time and a place for everything. I hate that saying. Sometimes there's not a time and a place for anything. If you're rude, disrespectful, and disregarding someone's feelings, why is there a time and a place for that? Especially if it's not warranted for that person. But you feel like I want to throw everything up against the wall because I've always subdued myself, or that's just what I do. I'm keeping it 100. You hear all these things that people say as a means to say, I'm turning off my mute button, that I'm not silencing myself. But I'm like, if you're keeping it 100, if you're not having a filter, what is the reason for it? Is it truly beneficial, or is this you just trying to keep it real? It's really interesting. So it depends on what the situation is, if those kind of things are appropriate. And no, you may choose that high road and it may come with a consequence. And this is why understanding the culture or the ecosystem that you're actually operating in, especially in work cultures, is important, because what you might think is okay could turn into an HR action and you could lose your job. I've seen it happen because somebody was keeping it 100. Well, guess what? Your 100 doesn't match the company mission. Now, when you dial it back to more personal relationships, whether it be with family members, children, significant others, those are different dynamics that then you can determine, and you can probably really navigate where you feel you are in regards to being able to express yourself and having it be accepted. But the thing about, if you find you're constantly muting yourself, even at work or in relationships that you have with family, friends, or significant others, it's not healthy, because now you have a frequency there that you're dialing back yourself to accommodate other people. And the thing about it is that it's going to have a negative impact on you and your happiness, because when it's reoccurring, it means there's a pattern of behavior that's being established that now you are actually facilitating. So Maya never speaks, or Maya never speaks up for herself. So I'm going to keep doing this because she's never challenged me on it. So it must be okay. Silence is often like saying it's okay, even if a person knows that it's not okay. And this is why it's important that you be able to self-advocate, learn how to properly communicate, and take back your power. Because then this is when you learn when to turn it on and to when to turn it off. And it's so important to keep this in your wheelhouse, because so many people don't get about striking the balance. If you're constantly always muting yourself, it's not healthy. And if you're doing it to make other people happy, if you're doing it to not rock the boat, if you're doing it because you realize that it's going to create some type of dissension or issue, stop and ask yourself, what's the issue? What's at stake if I speak how I feel? But more importantly, if you keep having all these reasons you have to keep muting yourself, it turns into, maybe this is a place that I shouldn't be. Maybe this is not healthy for me. Maybe I should reconsider some other options. Because if I don't get to be myself, this is where people get into, they say, wearing a mask or fake it till you make it. All these other things are fillers, and it's code word and code sayings for, this is what you do when you feel that you're not good enough, or that people don't respect you, or that what you say won't be received. A lot of things in our opinions and feelings may not always be received well by people, and we have to accept that. And this is where you find that inner courage, that self-efficacy, but it's also about how you communicate to people. Being able to say to someone, look, I know I'm going to have to say something to you that you're not going to like. This is how I feel. This is how I see things. Does it make it 100% right? No, it doesn't. But there's been some things that's been transpiring, and I've come to realize, because I've allowed this to go on for so long and I've never spoken up, I probably have given you the impression that this is okay, or that it doesn't bother me, but it actually does. And how a person chooses to hear you, if they ignore you, but more importantly, if they disregard you, then you know exactly what that person thinks of you. And if you really care for that person, the hardest thing to do is to make that decision that maybe you need to move on beyond that person, because maybe their emotional intelligence isn't where it should be. Maybe they don't know how to love you or appreciate you or celebrate you the way that they should. That's a statement I say to people that they can't always wrap their mind around. People love you the way they know how. It doesn't mean they always love you the way that they should. And people love you based on how they have been loved and what has been dictated to them, and what's appropriate or even inappropriate. They may know something is wrong, but not know how to do something that's a corrective action in their emotional and mental behavior. So hence they keep repeating the same pattern with everyone until someone has the courage to say, I'm not doing this with you. This is what I see. I don't particularly care for this. Can we change the trajectory of where we're going? Because this is why this bothers me. I understand you may not feel the same way, but this is how I feel. And if we're going to strike a balance in this, you have to hear me. You have to respect me. And either we make a change, or the change needs to be, maybe there shouldn't be you and I. And that's where you get into toxic relationships. People who refuse to meet you halfway. Because this is what this comes down to, meeting people halfway, allowing people to have the space to be authentic, to have a voice. And when you have good emotional intelligence, you don't struggle when someone brings to you what they have an issue with. You listen, you perceive it, you evaluate it, and then you say, okay, I didn't mean to do that. And there could have been some underlying cues that facilitated you to act that way. And that's where a lot of people struggle and don't know, hey, I've been kind of doing this wrong for a while and I need to do better with it. So when I think about some final thoughts, because I'm going to wrap up because our guest should be arriving soon, LaDonna Ray, who is a publicist and the owner of LR Media Group, will kind of expand on this conversation because the idea of silencing, muting yourself, it crosses so many boundaries in your life from your private and professional life, that understanding this idea of finding that voice and being comfortable with unmuting yourself, but doing it properly is important. And probably no better than a PR person can really talk to you about, hey, you've seen when people make bad choices about choosing to either overexpress themselves or underexpress themselves. So my final thoughts on this is that choosing to not express yourself because of you feel that a situation or relationship dynamic would be compromised is dangerous, because you're muting yourself as a mean to maintain the relationship. That's the first thing. It directly affects you emotionally, mentally, physically, financially when you silence yourself. And it's pretty much you are then subduing or putting your needs, wants, and desires to the back burner, which often leads to unhappiness, stress, and depression, to name a few things, of how when you can't find an outlet for your feelings, which are very energy driven, it starts to deteriorate from the inside. And eventually people will notice on the outside that you're not a happy person. You can only mask it for so long. I'll share a story with you that's really key, especially from a professional work perspective. And it was something for me that I totally understood what my boss was saying and had thought about it several times, but just kind of pushed it to the side. This was probably more than 20 years ago. I was sitting in an evaluation with a boss, and she says to me, "You do exceptionally good work. You are a team player, you are a leader. I know that when I give you something to do, it's always going to get done on time and right. And you're usually not afraid to ask the questions that are necessary to make sure those things transpire. But the thing that I have noticed about you, Maya, is that I am clearly aware of the fact that in most of your group dynamics, that you do most of the work, but you present it as if most of the group did the work opposed to you." She goes, "How I know this is because I've seen everybody's work individual. So I know their impression of their work, what it looks like. So I know when I see your signature all over a project." She goes, "I've always respected that you were a team player and that you would say to others, well, in the project we did this and so contributed here and we were able to work it out, but you never ever take credit for your role. You're always trying to distribute it throughout the team." She goes, "In life, if you don't make the adjustment and if you don't step forward and start taking credit for your actions, you will get passed up and passed by frequently because other people will begin to take over and take your shine and be okay with it." She goes, "I understand that you don't want to come across like you're hoarding all of the glory." She goes, "But if you're doing the work, you find a way to balance it out and assume your credit." And I looked at her and I said, "You know something, it's interesting you say that." I said, "I'm a doer. I'd get things done. It's just my nature. When people slack, don't do their part, I'll mention something, but I'm going to keep it going." I said, "I understand what you're saying. And there's a part of me that really is uncomfortable with taking the credit for too many things, because then people always say, oh, that person's a brown noser." She goes, "I get your point." She goes, "But there's a way you take credit for what you've done within your respective group." She goes, "And one of those things is really about delegation." She goes, "I can tell within your group projects often that there probably starts to be delegation, but you end up picking up the slack and running with it." She goes, "Stop picking up other people's slack and let them do it. And then when you present your project, you just pretty much say, so we worked on this project, I handled this, so-and-so handled this, so-and-so handled that." And hence, that makes a person know they're going to be accountable. But you say it up front, like we're each going to be responsible for presenting what we did. She goes, "And don't give people the easy out." She goes, "And then you can take credit for what you've done and you can shine." And she's like, there's nothing wrong with shining. For a long time professionally, I was one of those people that would mute myself, that I never felt comfortable like taking credit for things that I knew I had done. I kind of said that success made me a little bit nervous at times because I didn't want people to over or underthink what I was doing or think that I was doing too much. So just know, even within professional situations and workplaces, that we often do mute ourselves. Again, next week episode, which is called The Duality of Personality. There are things that we do that make sense to make adjustments to our environment. So if you're adjusting because you've learned a culture exists in a certain place, that's fine. Relationships are a little different because it's supposed to be mutually exclusive in regards to respecting everyone's emotion. So if we're talking about twos, now I'll tell you this, all relationships are not equally yoked. They're not. Especially often in romantic relationships, there tends to be a little bit of an imbalance. One person might be more of a giver than another person a taker. Don't let, if you are the giver, that imbalance totally becomes so skewed. And then you never seem to feel appreciated. Because you often have situations where people will fully take advantage of the fact that one person is always caring, loving, and endearing, and they want them to be happy, but they don't always reciprocate the happiness, or if they do it in very minimal ways. And I'll share for me something that recently happened, because remember, I like to be transparent and share experiences, because someone might say, hey, I've been there too. I made a decision to end a relationship because of the fact of the disproportionate amount of what I felt was being assertive, intuitive, and balanced. I realized that for everything that he presented to me that was important, that he sought in a relationship, I sought to fulfill those things. But on the flip side, I found that wasn't reciprocated back to me. Now, let me say this. I also realized there was a certain amount of accountability that I had to take into this, that we literally show people, some people like to say train, I'll say we like to show people how to treat us, how we want to be embraced, how we want to be loved, how we want to be appreciated. We show them that. And a good person, a person who's balanced with you, will reciprocate that. I realized there was an error in my way because I excused some things that, oh, you don't have to do that, don't worry. But then that translated into a whole bunch of other things. And then I began to feel frustrated because when I did start to try to express myself, like, hey, this bothers me, I know I wasn't being ignored. I started to be disregarded. And the minute I put my finger on it, I decided to stop reacting because, emotionally I was like, why would you do that? That's like, that's not something that I like. Why would you do that? We talk about it, there'd be an apology, but yet I'd see the same pattern of behavior. There was a frequency. But part of that frequency was rooted in the fact that I had muted myself so much and accepted certain things that I didn't particularly care for. It almost had become commonplace in a pattern of behavior. I had muted myself. You know why? For the very reasons I talked about earlier. I didn't want to rock the boat. The person had a lot on their plate, so I didn't want to create any more kind of dissension or anything that was going to be more difficult for them, or, any kind of just stress, because they already had a lot of stress on their plate. Ultimately, what I was doing, though, was creating stress for myself, and I was becoming unhappy. And I made a decision before I invested any deeper into the relationship, after on several occasions trying to express myself and seeing where it went. I said, this is a person who has middle to low emotional intelligence. This is a person, based on conversations that we've had, who has chosen to intentionally disregard my feelings on multiple occasions, knowing how I feel about certain situations. And then I made the decision, based on the information that I have acquired about the nature of this relationship and where it's going, why would I invest any more time, energy, or effort into it? And I was like, it's been a pleasure meeting your acquaintance. I do not believe this is going to work. In fact, we had a conversation about doing better in 2021. And I said, we should, and we talked about it. And one day I called him up and I said, I need to talk to you. I lied. What do you mean you lied? I said, I lied. I said we could do better in 2021, but I realized I can't do better in 2021 because there are things that bother me in this relationship that I have tried to address that keep repeating themselves. And as long as they keep repeating themselves, we're going to keep having issues because my needs, wants, and desires are not being properly met. Part of that's my fault, but I've addressed it. And yet you have disregarded the times I've actually addressed it with you. So hence, there's going to constantly be problems because you're refusing to meet me halfway. And if you can't meet me halfway, I feel like this is not a journey that's going to be a fun one. We should go our separate ways. And he was like, what? I said, yeah. And that was it. Done. That takes a lot of courage. One, not just to be, the rule is not being critical of other people and what they do and don't do. That's not it. It's about giving the proper observation of what bothers you, having conversations based in fact when you've muted yourself. So take a situation, and again, people often have poor emotional intelligence. So you may have to say, I need to share a situation with you. Please don't feel like I'm ruminating on the past. That's not it, but it's a past occurrence that's happened several times. So I have to bring it to the table to give the example of why it bothers me. So don't think I'm trying to hang out in the past because who wants to be there? But I need to bring it up. Sometimes you got to preface that for people, because if you don't, they're going to think that you're just being petty and bringing things up from the past. But past experiences build into future situations or present situations, so to speak. So with that being said, find the situations that you've been muting yourself on. This is how you can work to try to combat this, okay? And be very clear. Pick the key things. Everything can't be perfect in a work relationship or a romantic or platonic relationship or friendships. Pick the 2 to 3 things that bother you the most, that really get under your skin, that can elicit the wrong response, that you have a very dead set emotional thought on it, and your feelings, you get in them when it happens. You can feel yourself getting warm. It has that physiological response. You know that you really want to react opposed to respond. Find those 2 to 3 things. Find examples of them and say, these are the things. 1, this situation happened, and when this happened, it made me feel like this. 2, this happened, it made me feel like this. 3, this happened, it made me feel like this. And then you can say, based on what I've shared with you, 1, were you even aware that I felt this way about these situations? Some people might be like, no. Or they might say, and this will be interesting because here comes that disregard, along with low emotional intelligence and the inability to properly communicate. Well, I had a feeling that bothered you because I could tell by the way you responded, your body language. Because people think react and respond are the same thing, and there are slight differences, like ignore and disregard. I could tell it bothered you based on the way your body language was. So if you knew it bothered me, why didn't you say anything? And they might look at you and say, well, if you knew it bothered you, why didn't you say anything? That's a fair touche, pussycat. It's not incumbent upon other people to necessarily read you and then say, what's wrong? Now, mind you, emotional and intelligent people will tend to do that. Like, I can see this is bothering you. What's going on? You open the door for the conversation. That's always a good place to be, because it means you can handle a situation in the moment and not allow it to escalate or continue forward. But if you're not dealing with a person who has that ability to navigate the waters with you that way, it looks like LaDonna Ray is not going to be able to join us. She just texted me and said she had an emergency come up, so she won't be joining this conversation, which is too bad, because she really could have given us a lot of great insight into it. But we'll get her down the road and get her to talk on something else. So thank you, LaDonna, for checking in. But a key part of it is you are the person who is supposed to be responsible for speaking for yourself. Really quickly, I like to tie things into past episodes. So here's something I want you to think about that we've talked about. Remember, we talked about the idea of self-advocacy. We talked about being able to know that you are the person that has to find that voice and speak for yourself. So remember, that self-advocacy piece is the ability to articulate your needs, to make informed decisions about the support necessary to meet those needs. This is what self-advocacy is about. I'm going to say it again. It's the ability to articulate your needs, to then make a decision about those needs, and to be able to get the support you need to meet those needs. So if you're respectfully in a meaningful relationship and you're throwing around I love you, I care about you, you're saying it, they're saying it, then you know what? When you come forward with self-advocacy and saying, I need this, because needs have to be met before wants. Wants are the icing on the cake. Needs are the cogs that make the machine move. So if you need to feel appreciated, if you need to feel like someone gives you credit for something that's happening, then get that need fulfilled. The want piece will come later. And let's be honest, within respective relationships, needs need to be met. And if your needs are a little bit off the charts, and I'm sorry, you might be a person who might be in misery a lot. You got to be real about your needs. Some people try to make wants into needs, and that's a problem. So 1, you need to discern the difference between the two. The needs are the absolute things that you need to have in a working relationship and a family dynamic or in a romantic dynamic that legitimately play into your happiness. The wants are the extra things that just kind of make it all that much better. But the needs are the things that drives the bus. That's it. And you can't be missing things. So when you talk about self-efficacy, the key thing, I keep telling this to people, it's not incumbent about other people to figure out what makes you happy. That's your job. If something pisses you off, if something gets on your skin, don't go being Peter Popoff about it. That's not going to solve anything, because all people see is, remember I said that anger is one of the easiest feelings to elicit? You can call it up like that. It's on tap. It's ready to get down with you every single time. Anger will be like, I got your back, boo. Let's go. Because anger is not rational. So part of negating getting frustrated is stop muting what you feel and what you need to be happy. Speak it into existence. Tell that person what you need. And this is no different than if it's your boss at work. It's about conversation. It's about how you say things to people. So you might have to say, look, hey, do you think I can schedule some time to talk with you? Like, don't catch them when they're walking through. You may go into their office and say, hey, do you think there's a time I can schedule to meet with you? Or you may email them like, hey, I have something I want to chat with you about. Do you have time I can meet with you? And don't come across like, kind of aggressive or, like, I need to talk to you. Are you free? Just be like, hey, there's something I want to talk to you about. Are you free? Let me know. And because they might be unsuspecting and they might say, well, what do you want to meet about? But like, there's a couple of things that I've been thinking about that's on my mind that I really need to run past you because they're really important. And they'll be like, if it's a good boss, they'll say, okay, and they'll schedule time to meet you one-on-one and sit down. And remember, when you enter those conversations with people, be mindful. Don't be aggressive and don't be angry. Think your thoughts out. I've told people when you have to sit down with bosses, it's okay to jot down some notes so you can make sure you stay on the straight and narrow in your conversation, that you get the talking points in that you need to get in. You can do that when you're talking to somebody that you care about. Like, I wrote down some things I need to make sure that I don't miss out on because I know I can get so caught up in my emotions and I'll miss something. And I don't want to miss something. I want to get this right. And then you sit down and tell your boss, like, I'm really concerned about this. This has happened several times. And I was really trying to be a team player and not say something, but now it's getting to the point where I feel like it's starting to affect my performance and my overall work attitude. And this is not healthy because I know this is not the corporate culture we're seeking to have. I know there's high expectations for what people want of us. Remember, you're always kind of stroking the ego while you're putting in there what you want to say. Ego is everything for some people. But it's true. Most companies want a good, healthy company culture. It doesn't mean it can't be toxic, but it's what they try to achieve. So it's how you enter the conversation with people. If you're angry, aggressive, or critical, you will not get the outcome you're looking for. But if you're open, if you're honest, and even if you're a little bit vulnerable, chances are you'll get to where you need to be. And when you decide to take yourself off mute and start discussing your needs, wants are not there right now, they're totally on the back burner. That's different. You could say, my job is this, but I feel like I'm not doing a good enough job because I need this, this, and this to really do my job properly. Is there some way we can get these things? Or is there some kind of compromise we can make? Because obviously I want to do the best job I can do. You may walk away and maybe like that person, but they're going to respect you because you came professionally to them, opposed to being the person who's argumentative, who kind of talks and kind of stirs up the company culture and they're negative. That's what they don't want. They want you to come to them and they want you to speak to what the issue is. Just make sure how you do it. It's no different in relationships. Now, mind you, I'm always going to keep telling you, everybody's EI is not where it should be. You need to write down for yourself, what are your needs in a relationship? Respect, communication, great sex. I don't care what it is. Let's be honest. Let's say your struggle is, I feel you're very selfish in our sexual exchange and I'm just over it. Don't say it that way though. You may just have to say, I kind of feel like I'm not getting to where I need to be. And I don't know if it's because I haven't expressed to you that I want more. Because here's the thing that I will hear at people in therapy. They're unhappy maybe necessarily with where they are specifically in their sexual relationship with their significant other, but they've never really had the courage to speak what their needs are in that dynamic. So their partner the whole time is going along with it like, oh, I think this is good. This is working for me. She hasn't said nothing, so it must be working for her too. See, that's the danger in muting yourself. That when you don't speak up to what your needs are, when you don't self-advocate, someone will assume that what is happening, that you're okay with it. You just co-signed on whatever it is that's going on. And this is why you have to find that voice, take back your power to say, I feel like I probably haven't made this the best situation, but I'm kind of looking for something more in this area. I realized I really haven't said anything. And then I started to think, I can't really say that I'm dissatisfied because of necessarily you if I've never told you what I need. So I figured I should tell you what I need because you tell me what you need, and I try to be that person for you. And I'm not just talking about on a sexual level. I'm talking about on an emotional and mental or any form of support level. Like, if you don't tell people what you need and stop assuming they're going to read your mind, chances are you're never going to get to where you really need to be. Stop being afraid that you're going to compromise a situation. Stop being afraid that you're going to create some form of dissension, because if I express my needs, if I express how I feel, it's not going to be received well. Well, if it's not going to be received well, the question always comes back to why. And if you can't come up with good reasons besides somebody's going to make someone uncomfortable or they're not going to be happy with it, so what, you're supposed to remain unhappy and uncomfortable? That might be a situation that you need to evaluate, because it's not healthy, it's not good energy, and it's almost borderline toxic. But most people are so afraid of being alone or being rejected, they just pull it back and they stand behind that veil of self-doubt and self-sabotage because it's super comfortable to them. And it's sometimes people have done it for so long, it's habitual for them. They don't know anything different. They've never known to find a voice in any of the relationships they've ever had, whether it be private or professional, whatever the case may be, to find their truth and to speak to it. And that's the part that's difficult about all that. So unmuting yourself is not necessarily easy. It requires asking yourself why you're muting yourself, what is the benefit of muting yourself, and how frequently is it happening? And if there's no benefit to it, and remember I said, all situations aren't necessarily muting. It might be adapting. You have to determine what that means and go forward with it. All right, everybody, that's episode 32. Which I've enjoyed. I was looking forward to doing this one. I'm kind of bummed that LaDonna couldn't jump in with us, but she had something happen. She also teaches, so she had an issue with within the school thing, so she couldn't hop on. But we'll definitely have her on in the near future to kind of chat with us about some other topics, because her insight is really, really interesting. All right, let's go ahead and shift gears and bring on Miriam, our musical muse. How are you?
Good. I liked today's topic.
You know, and I really feel, with it being Women's History Month, it's a great conversation to have, because women so often feel that they have to dial back how they think and what they feel because they're always accommodating other people. I'm not saying that men aren't accommodating, but I think women always feel like they have to silence themselves often and go along with things because that's how our culture has always dictated that women should behave.
Yeah, I've done that a lot, but I usually come to my senses and then express my feelings, and then most of the time they're like, but I'm confused. How you talked about the not emotionally intelligent, like I've dealt with that before, but I have been to blame before as well, because I forget that I just want other people to be happy so much that I forget about myself in the situation. So I liked this week's episode a lot.
And a lot of people are guilty of that. They're givers, and often givers, because I'm a giver.
Yeah,
and I do really struggle with taking. And one of the things I had to learn was, Maya, you have needs like everybody else. So why you can't expect that everyone's going to have the same nature of giving as you do. Some people legitimately need instructions on how to be a good friend, a good sibling, a good parent. They need like almost written instructions, because they live in their own silo so frequently, they have no idea how they've impacted other people.
Yeah.
So when I came across this song, because we did the whole 5 songs from the Heart of Flow EP. Make sure you go listen and download that. Spotify, iTunes, Amazon. When I was listening to it, one of the things that came to my mind was it's called Breathe, the song that we're going to listen to. And I thought, the minute that I became comfortable with unmuting myself and speaking to what I needed in relationships, I felt like I could breathe. And the whole time I hadn't understood how much I had been holding my breath along the way.
Yeah.
So that was my thought when I heard it. Tell me a bit about the song and kind of where it came from. Was it a situation that inspired it?
For this one, honestly, it's been so long since I've even listened to the song. I actually released it right before everything was going on with the pandemic and stuff. So I thought that was like kind of ironic with like the masks and everything. But it's, I wanted to, a lot of times when I'm writing, I want the music to reflect what I'm going for. And so with Breathe, I wanted a track that was kind of like felt like it was breathing physically and matching the lyrics that went along with it. And I was really happy when I wrote this song because I think it really reflected what I wanted it to. And it was kind of a start for me producing wise to reflect exactly what I wanted it to reflect with the lyrics. And so, yeah, I haven't listened to it in a while, but I do remember it being one of my favorite songs as well, along with Time is a Bomb, because I love that song so much.
Love
Yeah.
that song.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and jump in and listen to Breathe. Again, I wasn't looking for it, but I stumbled across
but
it.
you found it.
And I found it, or I don't know, maybe it found me. I'm not sure.
It did. It found you.
All right, it found me. All right, everybody. This is Miriam McQueen, the My Music Muse. We're about to listen to her. We're all original work here with Miriam at this point.
Yeah,
One of
at
her
this
original
point.
pieces. Yep. Breathe, everybody. Hope you enjoy.
You don't know how many times I've felt like I was crazy, never understood my mind. Terribly terrified of losing all my sense. Broken down so far it's hard to just breathe in. Sometimes I feel 10 feet tall, but most days I'm so short and small. My lungs just run away from me. How can I catch up if I can't breathe? One small mistake stretched out in time. Moments I could have if I weren't lost in my mind. I'm tired of being tired, but not able to sleep. And when I finally fall, I'm taunted in my dreams.
Sometimes I feel 10 feet tall, but most days I'm so short and small. My lungs just run away from me.
How can I catch up if I can't try? What is the use if you're dead inside? I need some oxygen. My fight or flight is kicking in. I can't go down this road again. You don't know how many times I've felt like I was crazy, never understood my mind.
All right, everybody, that was Breathe.
I like that one.
And you said you haven't heard in a while. Did it kind of like?
Yeah, I was like, oh my gosh. I just forget, I'm always moving on. When I release a song, I move on from it. And I need to remember to go back and remind myself. But I love that one. I do.
Well, you achieved the goal of that wanted to feel like it was breathing.
Yes.
And it overall, from the sound and lyrics, you hit it. It worked.
Yeah. That's what I love that one. I love that song.
Yeah, so I told you, so my recommendations is, of course, listen to all her stuff. But
Yes.
Time is a Bomb.
Yes.
Love it, love it, love it. This is now like my second favorite.
Yes.
So there you go. So make sure you check out Miriam McQueen. You can go to miriammcqueen.com. You can find her on Facebook, IG, Twitter. She is so comprehensive because it's just Miriam McQueen. So you have to think about changing it some different way to figure out how to find it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we will see you next week, and hopefully you won't be telling me you got snowed in. So.
Oh, God. Fingers crossed.
All right. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye. Everybody, that is Miriam McQueen, the M.A.Y.A musical muse, as I said. We feature her song because it tends to mirror the topic that the show is having. So I came across that one, and I thought, so often we feel we can't breathe when we are totally dumbing ourselves down in situations to accommodate other people, muting how we feel. So hopefully this episode resonated with you. You got something from it. Remember, you can find all episodes in M.A.Y.A at MAYAkai.com, as well as go to the podcast resource section. There'll be some supplemental things that you can read to kind of add to the conversation. Hopefully by now, you have subscribed to the YouTube channel, M.A.Y.A. If not, I ask you to do so now. And if you have your podcast platform of choice, you can subscribe to me there as well. So whether it's iTunes, Google, iHeart, Amazon Audibles, to search M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition, all that must be there, just like that. And then you can subscribe, and you'll get alerts when new episodes are actually put into those different podcast platforms. All right, everybody, that's it for me. Thank you for tuning in. I always appreciate everyone who's front and center. Remember, a key thing about the world opens up a bit more. Hopefully you've gained some insight, and the time that you had to be alone with yourself, which for some people was a whole lot of time, you gain some insight about really working on that better version of you, and to think about how to prepare for the unexpected and challenges, because that's really what, to me, the whole last year was about, was an exercise of the unexpected. And it's going to work you out whether you want to or not. So hopefully, you dug into episodes of M.A.Y.A. We're at 32 and you've got something from it. So until next time, everybody, remember, your present becomes your past and your future is no more. So live every single day to the fullest, because you never get it back. All right. I'll see you all next Thursday, 2 p.m. Central Standard Time. Ciao.
Get inspired. Get motivated with M.A.Y.A and the M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition podcast.
Something that I take pride in is trying to be forward thinking outside the box, challenging myself. And as I challenge myself, hopefully I challenge you.
Find M.A.Y.A on Twitter and Instagram at M.A.Y.A_Akai. On Facebook at M.A.Y.A Akai Presents.
We're going to talk health, wealth, fitness, mental health, financial, lots of different things that can empower you as you seek out the ambition that you're pursuing.
Or get everything M.A.Y.A at MAYAAkai.com.